All right, great. Welcome, everyone. Let me share my, not share, slideshow. Okay. So welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Hillary. I'm one of the co-directors of event programming at BPMA. We are here today with Lynn Levy, who's going to talk us through communicating with executive audiences, share some insights there. As always, we see a boardroom full of people. That's exciting. Hello. We will record, we are already recording the session. We will upload the recording to BPMA YouTube channel after, as well as our website. But we will also send a follow-up email to everyone who registered with some links to the presentation, to the recording, and a few other resources. So don't worry about that. We also have a survey that we like to send out at the end just to kind of get some feedback and some ideas for next time. So try to stick around for that if you can. If not, that will also go out in that email. But otherwise, welcome. We are here today. Hosted through BPMA, our event today, so Boston Product Management Association. We used to be kind of narrowed into just the Boston product management and product marketing communities, but since COVID have definitely expanded to more virtual options, which helps us reach a wider audience, which is exciting. But we're essentially a professional association in sort of the greater Boston area. We focus on things like career development, mentorship, events, networking community for product management and product marketing professionals in the area. So we try to do one virtual event like this per month. And then we've started doing a few more in-person events recently, which has been great to meet some of you in person and kind of spread the word. So that we'll be doing about once a quarter. Our next one will probably be scheduled for sometime in August or September in the Boston area. So hopefully can see a few of you there. But definitely check out the website, bostonproducts.com, where you can check out those events and some other offerings that we have. If you don't have a membership to BPMA, it's, I believe, $20 for students per year and $50 otherwise. So definitely, check that out or reach out to us if you have questions as well. We are sponsored by and have partnerships with several organizations in the Boston area and beyond. A lot of these are really interesting organizations that can also help to kind of further career aspirations for folks in the product space, offer events, offer mentorship, job opportunities. We had Larry from NDT and a few folks from Product Board join us at our last in-person event as well. So good networking opportunities there too. Definitely check out our sponsors. And then just if you never joined one of these sessions before, we definitely encourage cameras on if you're comfortable. I know for some folks it's lunchtime, so no worries if not, but really want to create a community here. Definitely encourage networking. So in the Zoom chat, we like to just ask folks at the beginning of these sessions, if you're comfortable, to share your name, your title, an organization or school that you belong to, and where you're based. I think last time or a few months ago, we had someone join us from Germany. So just interesting to see where people are joining from. And then feel free to ask questions in the chat as we go. Absolutely. We will set aside some dedicated Q&A time at the end, but also if at any point, Lynn, you're interested in some of the questions that are coming in, just let me know and I can read them out. So I'm going to hand it over to Lynn today, who's going to, again, talk us through some tips and insights around communicating with executive audiences. So I'll stop sharing my screen and pass it over to Lynn.
Right. Give me 1 second, everybody.
No problem. And Lynn is also on the board for BPMA as well. So lots of BPMA connections here.
All right. Welcome, everybody. My name is Lynn Levy. And we're going to talk today about probably the challenge we hear the most about, which is managing the wonderful world of senior leadership. Oh, we've got a conference room full of people. Awesome. All right. So who the heck am I? I spent my entire career in tech in the world of product management. I now run my own coaching program. I'm a leadership and career coach just for product managers. And I'm also vice president here at the BPMA. And my goal is to help product managers level up, innovate, build things they care about, and thrive, have work-life balance, and love your job. So let's talk about the wonderful world of senior leadership. Hang on. Sorry about that. Let's try this again. Hey, we're going to talk about senior leadership. So we're going to talk a little bit about psychology, right? And the reason we're going to talk about it is because when you understand what drives people, you can more effectively navigate and influence them. So let me say that again. When you understand what drives people, you can influence them. So like I said, I think managing up is one of those, it's hard, it can be emotional, and it really is one of the things that prevents product managers, senior product managers from crossing that chasm into being a director. So let's start collaborating in the chat. You're presenting to a bunch of senior leaders, and all of a sudden you start getting grilled with questions. What happens? What happens to you in the moment? Throw it in the chat. Do you freeze? Get nervous? I panic? Defensive? Get confused? Flustered? Exactly. Some people get too wordy. Great, Charlie. Absolutely. Some people can't speak. Some people get too wordy. You start second guessing yourself. Extreme nerves. So here's the thing, and I'm not going to, and I'll do a separate presentation on this, but what is actually happening is our brain goes into what we call fight or flight, flight, or freeze, which basically means our brain doesn't know the difference between a CFO grilling us with questions about the financial part of our business plan and being chased by a lion. Our brain literally doesn't know the difference, which is why we go into that state. But let's talk about it from the perspective of a senior leader. And again, I want you to understand how they tick so you can influence them. The first thing to understand is when they start grilling you, when they raise their voice. It has nothing to do with you. Okay? Literally, it has nothing to do with you. It has nothing to do with their trust in you, whether they think you're doing a good job. It is because they now have power. Okay, so that's the first thing to understand, is to deal with that thing in the between your ears saying, oh my gosh, I told you couldn't do it. Understand this has nothing to do with you. So what happens when you work for a director and he or she is amazing? Jam, you collaborate, and suddenly they get promoted to VP or senior VP. Suddenly they have a lot of power. What happens to their behavior? Throw it in the chat. What happens when somebody you adore suddenly gets promoted? For me, I've seen leaders become just like different people. These empathetic people, suddenly they start, frankly, acting like jerks. They feel entitled. It's their way or the highway. What else? And this certainly isn't all leaders, but it's a good number of them. Yeah, they start acting like they need to prove their authority. Relationships are changing. So here is the interesting thing. You look at Michael Scott, horrendous boss, horrendous. So we're going to talk about what I call the psychology of power. And this is based on research from New York University. So one of the challenges when you get to that senior leadership, and again, you need to understand this so you can influence them, is they've got to go from visionary to tactical, visionary to tactical. And these are actually physically different parts of the brain, okay? When you're in visionary mode, the tactical part goes on standby. When you're in tactical mode, the visionary part goes on standby. And what actually changes is when you're visionary, you actually get a dopamine fix. It feels good. You've got power. And again, this is nothing to do with somebody's personality. It is biology. So when people get power, they stay in this visionary mode. It actually changes the way they work. What happens is the part of the brain that cares about people is actually physically muted. Let me say that again. The part of the brain, because they have power and the dopamine and all the chemical reactions, the part of their brain that cares about people is muted. Right? You think about that from an evolutionary perspective. It makes sense. If you've got a leader protecting the herd, they've got to think strategically versus any one individual person. But what that means is in our world is they are purely goal focused. They forget the fact that the way to meet the product goals is actually through the people. And there's like a major disconnect. So what does this mean? Power increases the focus on the reward versus the risk. The risk, I've gone to senior leadership. Listen, the only way we're going to meet the date is if the sun is out, if it's raining pineapples from the sky, we double the resources and we do handstands all day. And they'll say, great, do it. I just told you why we couldn't do it. Just make all that happen. It's fine, Lynn, just do it. They assume everything will be fine. They only think, and again, this is brain science, they think of the world from their perspective, from their goals. And what happens is it actually blinds them to other people's perspectives. It's my goal. Doesn't matter how many people are run over, doesn't matter the risk, we're going to make it happen. Which also means leaders don't care about the details. Just do it. I don't want to hear the sausage making, I call it. Just do it. And again, in order to understand and influence senior leaders, you have to understand how they tick. So let's talk about, I'd love people to talk at this point. Tell me, where did we see this happen in the last week? Power blinded people to other people's perspectives. Took unnecessary risk. We saw this in a tragedy just last week. Not with Russia, with the Titan, with the submarine. Right? That was power ignoring all the risks, ignoring other people's opinions with obviously awful consequences. What's another example that we've seen in the world of tech? Somebody so blinded to the realities of what's going on, making awful decisions. Theranos, right? Theranos. So Forrest, I'd love it if you went off mute.
Oh, hey.
Hey, tell us about what you put in the chat, because we think it's personality and we think it has to do with us. So
Yeah, I've seen this. You're hitting on so many things that I've seen in my 10 or so years as a product manager, with senior leaders being not so focused on minutia and really only caring about getting the thing done, and not caring about any of the obstacles that we say are in the way. And I always thought it was an inherent personality trait in those individuals. I didn't think about the fact that, you know, the power that they've, you know, now have has kind of done that to them. So I didn't
Exactly.
think
And
about
it's
that.
fascinating. Somebody says it's a greed. Actually, no, it's biology.
Yeah.
Right? Let's think of this before we were human beings. You had a leader of a pack of animals. And their job was, you know, whatever, to keep safe, to keep everybody fed. They weren't worried about any one individual or just let's go. So it's biological. So let's go back to what I said at the beginning. When you're sitting in front of senior leadership, you're getting grilled with questions. I like to say it's like you're in the FBI office, like being questioned. It has nothing to do with you. They don't even realize that you're getting triggered. They have no clue. They just want their question answered. They just want their question answered. And for me, as a product manager and product management leader, once I realized this, I'm like, oh, that's what's going on. Now I can start to play the game. Now I can start to influence them. But now I understood them a little bit more. Okay. Again, power leads to unrealistic optimism. Leaders, I mean, like I said, they'll just push aside things that can get in the way. I mean, I'm sure we've all been part of releases that have gone out with massive risk, but senior leadership said do it anyway. It's because they have goals, whether that goal is revenue, their bonus, looking good to the board. All that other stuff, their brain literally neglects. And again, this is the sub, the terrible sub. Theranos, another great example of this happening. Google, amazing employer, and laying off thousands by email. Right? Who the heck made that decision to just blind it to the impact that would have on its reputation and on the employees and people who were left? So you see this all the time. So where do you see this in your world? Where do you see this? When you're presenting, when you're making decisions, roadmap, throw in the chat. Where do you see this dynamic of senior leaders ignoring the risks, thinking goals, not thinking about people? Where have you seen it at work? Throw it in the chat. It's really important to be able to visualize. Or have you seen it? Yeah, when you're in trouble for moving too slowly. They don't care why you're moving slowly, just get it done. Don't give me the details. I don't care. Just get it done.
I think being in technical product management, I run into this a lot. And I actually had a meeting earlier this morning where, you know, we're trying to optimize the best solution, but there's this like laser tunnel vision on like, let's just get this thing for this group, but like, let's not mind what happens to like the rest of the system or the rest of the people. So yeah, that's something I'm trying to evangelize against.
So here's the thing. So let's talk about that. So I'm going to turn my screen share off. So what does this mean? Everything you present to senior leadership, it's not about you and your details, it's about what it means to their goals. They literally don't care about how it happens.
Yep.
What can you do so my goal is met? So we have to adjust how we position in terms of, well, you know, this group did this and this did this, and engineering and the third party vendor don't care. Tell me how we're going to meet the goal that I have. The second thing it means, I coach directors and VPs on this model because again, they struggle with it too, is you cannot go to senior leadership complaining. Oh my gosh, the team is burned out. Our velocity, I have to give people a break.
Yeah, they're just going to ask you what the solution is.
They literally don't care. Remember, they don't care about people because they care about goals. It's biology. We can't change biology. You can say the team is burnt out. What I need is 10 more resources to meet this release date because we have $5 million tied to it. Oh, that they can get their head around. And yes, Dave, sometimes the goals are opaque. Absolutely. Sometimes the goals have nothing to do with the organization. It's being seen as a leader versus the chief revenue officer. So what else do you see? So you're showcasing what you know and pointing them to. Yes, so unreasonable frequent team changes. They don't care about the people impact. So when senior leaders are reorging people, and especially if you're a manager or a leader, you have to outline in a numeric form what the impact is today, tomorrow, and a year from now. So you really have to get on top of the organizational goals, the revenue numbers, the sales pipeline, so you can explain the impact. You can't say, well, they're not going to be as productive. People are going to leave. Again, people from a senior leadership perspective, from a biology perspective, people are resources. And this is awful to say. I admit it, it's awful. I went to a whole conference on this and I'm like, holy smokes, this explains it. Doesn't make it right. And this is not going to work in the age of AI when your people are the only things you have. So hit me with questions and then we'll dive a little bit more into this. Let's just open up the floor for questions because it's a fascinating topic, but it's important to understand as you navigate up.
I have a question.
Sure.
So how do you navigate these waters within an organization that is not very mature when it comes to product management?
So let's do a use case. So give me an example. When you are trying to justify a new tech development.
Yeah. Yep.
So being a technical product manager is really hard with this psychology because it's really hard to get new tech.
Thank you.
Right? Because a lot of times, we've got to upgrade the platform. Okay, I don't really care. Why is that important?
Mm-hmm.
So everything you do, you've got to spend time understanding how it ties to the business goals, how it ties to customer retention. You know, so we talk about product being outcomes focused. This is not, you've got to, everything you do, you've got to get really familiar with marketing and the business plan in order to get through the door. Because they're going to assume best case. Well, the platform could fall apart. We could have massive security issues. We don't have any security issues yet, do we? No. Well, we could. Nah, not going to get through.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think sometimes expressing technical priorities, the business is like, we don't really care. We need this new functionality because these stakeholders need it. But I think, yeah, tying it to how it impacts the business is beneficial for sure.
Other questions or comments?
I've got a question. I feel like I learn best by examples, and I'm trying to figure out like, where can I find more examples of good communications to executives so that I can sort of pattern match on some of that? You know, are there books that sort of delve into this? I know there's a ton of sort of business books. I wonder if there are any that go deep on this.
So the best one for this, believe it or not, is President Barack Obama. If you look at his speeches, he talks to outcomes and he uses a tone that says, I know what I'm doing. I know what I'm doing. So let's do another couple of examples. Barack Obama is one. Steve Jobs did this. slow. So it's both what you're saying, number one, no sausage making. I'm going to give an example right now. Charlie. All right. All right, senior leadership. Thanks everybody for coming. We are 3 months behind schedule. We have a dependency on the third party vendor. They're finding a lot of bugs. Now, a lot of the bugs are P2s and P3s, but we have some P1 bugs as well. And in order to get them fixed, we're going to need a 3-month delay, or we're going to have to bring on additional resources. And there's still a lot of uncertainty, but that's what we recommend. Senior leadership, you now seem like a loser. Don't know what you're doing, and you have no credibility. So I'm going to adjust my tone and what I say. Thank you for coming, senior leaders. We have a 3-month delay in the release. I want you to watch my voice tone. We have a 3-month delay in the release due to a third-party issue. We're going to double our resources because we know there's $10 million dependent on it. We will get the purchase order or the funding request to you by Friday. So I changed what I said. I didn't get into sausage making. And when I spoke, I call it landing an airplane. Every sentence goes down. The release is late with a pause. We need double the resources. Pause. Did you folks see a difference between it? Sausage making. I mean, I could even say the sun is purple today. There's a forecast for pineapple falling from the moon. And it sounds credible. So Barack Obama he's the person I use with my clients a lot as an example of how to speak. And again, so that's your shoulders, your voice cadence. And then from the details, no sausage making. They don't care about the pain it causes your teams. They don't care about why it happened. How are you going to fix it? And what does it mean to them? Okay. And like I said, for me, once I understood this brain psychology, I'm like, oh, now I understand it. I can navigate it. Right? If we don't understand what's going on in their head, it's hard to navigate. So, anytime you're presenting, it's not about you. It's about them. You need to tailor to their goals, what they need to know, and in their language. You've got to frame it. If it's an issue that doesn't impact their goals, do not waste their time. The things you need to bring are the things that obviously impact the product and impact their goals. And do not dwell on the details of this group did this or this group. Again, all they care about is the reward. How are you going to help me meet my goal? And exactly what we said before, Harvard Business Review, a new tech development, it's hard to get approved unless you can explain how it supports a strategic goal. Focus on the impact, not the process. Remember, they care about the what, not the how. And you need to use data intelligently. I had a client, she's now a senior director, and she said, Lynn, I love data. We're data product managers. I want to show them all my data. No, they don't care about the internal metrics. You need to use data with power and precision, the metrics that will enable them to make a decision. And that's all. And like I said, if it doesn't impact their goals, just be careful whether you need to bring it to them. And you need to understand their politics. You need to understand what is their agenda. What are their objectives? And how does the issue you're raising impact their objectives? And this is why you'll have a product question or recommendation that is perfectly logical. And yet they go left. Why are you going left? Well, because maybe they're trying to become a influencer and get a position at South by Southwest speaking on stage. Who knows? And I'm sure you have all dealt with recommendations where things go left. All right, I'm gonna hit the chat for a minute. Hang on. Ooh, there are lots of questions. Hold on. Okay, so you can give them options to choose from, but each of those options, it needs to be clear what it means to their goals. Okay, so again, don't ask them to get into the how. And yes, Hillary, confidence, tone, and demeanor, critical. And the good news, it can be practiced. This is all learned. Right, when you think about it, instead of the release is late, we're not quite sure what we're going to do, we're going to double the engineering, okay, let's go. The release is late. We're going to double our engineering staff. We kick off on Friday. See how the tone made me sound more important? Okay. How do you understand the things execs who you may or may not have relationships with? So, great question. You need to get really close to your cross-functional team members. If marketing is going to be a blocker, if the CMO is going to be a blocker, you need to do some research with your PMM and their boss on a critical decision. And you don't always know. But when you're reviewing a decision or a presentation with your boss, make sure your boss's boss sees it. And ask the questions, what are some politics that could get in the way? This is all politics. As much as we hate it, this is just politics, it's just being human. So we have to ask. Okay. Yeah, so Forrest, tell us about your question. So you report to a senior leader?
Yeah. So like, that's the person with whom, like, because they're my line manager, I'm going to need to get into the sausage making with them sometimes, but they're already at that level where they don't care. So what do you do in that scenario?
Okay, so Forrest, put your shoulders up, sit back, put the shoulders up, put your shoulders back. Make the decisions.
Yeah.
If they believe you needed somebody to guide you, they put somebody in there. Otherwise, make sure you know their goals really clear.
Yep.
And what will happen is if you get too much into the sausage making, you will start to be seen as the get things done person.
Yeah.
So partner with your engineering leader, partner with your customer success management leader, so that you've got other people surrounding you as you're making these decisions. Yes, How to Win Friends and Influence People is a great book. What if the person you report to is not a product leader? So tell me more.
Well, I can go on for days, but I think, you know, the reality of my role is I'm in an organization that is not super mature when it comes to product. So I'm kind of in this, you know, like junk drawer of a department where the people that report to this person don't do the same things as me. So I think sometimes when I try to do, you know, product talk or pitch an idea, you know, I'm kind of met with like the person's listening, but they're not understanding. So I think that's definitely been a challenge for me to sort of try to layman's terms what I'm trying to communicate.
So so the challenge, not the challenge, but the high level solution in regard to leveling up in all communication is to meet the person where they're at. Don't expect people to come to you and want to get into the details in your life. So
Okay.
when you're meeting with your boss and you have a product idea, again, it needs to be spoken about vis-a-vis what they need. What are their objectives?
Yeah, I'm seeing the theme here, and that's definitely resonating with me quite a bit. So thank you.
So we always need to think about the other person. What do they need to make a decision? And again, we may want to tell them everything. We'd love the details. Everything we do, we need to meet the other person. I call product leadership a dance. We are literally dancing with different people who have different needs, different styles, and different objectives, meeting to meeting, moment to moment. And this is why at the end of the day, you guys are so tired, because this is really hard.
Thank you.
Hey, I call product management the people game. It's the human game, not the strategy game. Strategy is easy. This is the hard stuff.
Agreed.
Yeah, so giving pushback is a challenge. So they want a feature. So, oh, this is so much fun. I have a list of what I call power questions that I use for this. So senior leadership, they're pushing hard for a feature. Walk me through how this meets our Q3 goals. Here are the assumptions I'm making. Walk me through, if we do this, how is it going to impact this? And you want to say it in this nice, calm, neutral tone. Because you have to disarm them, because you're questioning them, right? They're going to get defensive. You've got to disarm them. Walk me through the logic of how we got here. Yeah, pushing back is a science. Okay, let me do a couple more slides. All right. So you need to mirror senior leadership, and that's what I was doing before. If somebody from the CMO is at the meeting and they ask you a question with a lot of enthusiasm, I want you to respond with emotion and enthusiasm. Oh my gosh, that's a great question. I know the user conference is coming up. I think we're going to have some, great people there. So let me walk you through the impact. If you have the CFO grilling you with questions and very neutral tone, you need to take this neutral tone. So the concept is called mirroring. All right. So again, my name is Lynn. I've got a website. I've got a masterclass where I go through all sorts of tips like this to help you navigate the world of product. And again, my biggest thing is product leadership. It's the human game. Building a strategy, although it can be hard, we have to influence and get people to buy off on it and agree to it. And that is all based on human skills. So really the secret to leveling up, the secret to communicating with executives is understanding how to play this game. We're playing Go Fish. They're playing chess. So we need to learn how to play chess. All right, questions, other questions?
What are some other power questions? You said you have a list of power.
So some of the good power questions are, here are the assumptions I'm making. Are we on the same page? Interesting that you really think we need to do this. Walk me through how you came to that conclusion. Tell me, you must have different information than I do. I'm struggling to get my head around why we should do this versus this. Walk me through it, please. And set in this nice and neutral tone versus a questioning tone. Because we don't want to trigger them into, defensive mode. Other questions? Yeah, it's tough, Dave. Absolutely. This is tough. And this is why sometimes people who get promoted aren't the ones who know more than you, but they're the ones who can play this game better. And again, it is a learned skill. There's there's psychology behind it. There's science behind it. So it is a framework. There's a bunch of frameworks on how to do this. So I don't want you to assume that, oh my gosh, I don't know how to do this. It's about learning the tools. Feel free to head to my website. I blog a lot about this. But this is the secret to leveling up and really to relieve some of that anxiousness we have when we're dealing with senior leadership, is just to understand the game, understand the rules.
And Lynn, there's another question in the chat around from Lisa. Would you talk more about how to ferret out leadership's true goals versus their stated goals?
You need to be a keen behavior watcher. So you need to when you see leadership presenting, you see them at a meeting, you need to be watching the body language and the interactions they are having with other senior leaders. You are going to need, you always want to have somebody at a director or VP level who you know really well in all your major departments. So you can work with them to figure out the game. Cross-functional management is absolutely critical, not just at your level, but 2 levels up. And I love the question. I actually we go through a half an hour as part of my coaching program on this. If they ask you, how are you at the coffee machine? What do you think, based on what I just said, you should say? I'm great. The release is on time. I know we've got $20 million tied to it. I'm great. Cisco just deployed the solution. Short, crisp, outcome driven. Versus, I'm good. How are you? You've got to make yourself memorable. That's a whole nother topic we can talk about. It's branding yourself internally as a leader. Okay, was this content helpful, gang? I always like to double check. Am I giving you useful content?
Very helpful. Thank you.
Okay, good. Any other questions for today?
Yeah, any last?
Again, feel free to head to my website, get on my email list. I talk about this stuff all the time.
And in the meantime, while we wait for any last questions, I just wanted to drop in the chat the link to our survey. Takes just a minute or two. One second. Oh, and Lynn, there was an ask to drop your website in. Thank you. Okay, so that forms link is the link to the survey. It just takes a minute or two to just say, what went well for you, what could have been improved, what could we do differently next time? And then a really important part for our events team is also thoughts on future topics you'd like to hear about. So we do try to map out a schedule of topics over the year, but it's really meant to be driven by all of you and what you're looking for. So anything that was related to what Lynn said, or other topics in the product space that you have in mind, just drop into that survey. And again, I'll send it as well in a follow-up email. Yeah, any last questions? And thank you so much, Lynn, for your time today.
No problem.
Definitely check out her website, check out BPMA as well. If you just Google BPMA, you'll find the site. And yeah, we hope to see you all at future events. Reach out, add the BPMA folks on LinkedIn if you're interested, and let us know how else we can be helpful too. So thank you for joining us on for a lot of you your lunch break, and we will talk to you soon. Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone.
One quick question.
Thanks all.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, so I think this is probably my top skill to work on. And one thing I'm considering is like whether it's better to continue working on it at a place where I already know everybody, or whether it makes sense to sort of go to a new place and work on it more there. I'm just trying to figure out which one is sort of a higher leverage way to work on leveling this up.
I would. Oh, Charlie, set up time and we'll have this is a conversation.
Okay.
It's definitely a conversation. There are pluses and minuses to both. Part of it has to do with what we call bias. Once you're in a company, people have a perception of you that's hard to adjust. It's called frequency bias. So they already have an opinion, so it's hard to adjust it. Versus a new place, you're starting fresh.
Thanks.
Okay.
Great. Thanks, everyone. Have a good rest of your week.
Thanks, Lynn.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Hillary.
Bye.
Bye.
everyone.